In the minds of billions, Google is untouchable, a tech giant so dominant that it seems immune to failure. From the colorful logo on your browser's homepage to the search bar that has become the gateway to the entire internet, Google feels like a permanent fixture of modern life. But behind that polished image lies a history of staggering missteps, billion-dollar blunders, and moments when the company's future was hanging by a thread. Few people realize that Google has come dangerously close to disaster more than once, not because of a single mistake, but because of a series of risky bets, fierce rivals, and relentless pressure from governments and innovators who wanted to knock it off its throne. From failed products that cost fortunes to antitrust lawsuits that threatened to rip the company apart, the road to Google's dominance has been far from smooth. And with the rise of AI competitors like ChatGPT, some say the next big fall might already be on the horizon. Stay with us until the end, because what you're about to hear isn't just the story of how Google became the king of search. It's the story of how that crown almost slipped from its head. Google's story began in 1995 at Stanford University when two PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, crossed paths. At first, they reportedly didn't get along. Larry found Sergey too outspoken, while Sergey thought Larry was stubborn. But their shared fascination with organizing the chaotic web brought them together. They started a research project called Bankrupt, a search engine that ranked websites based on how many other sites linked to them. This concept, later known as PageRank, would become the foundation of Google's success. By 1998, working out of a friend's garage in Menlo Park, they officially launched Google Inc. The internet was already crowded with search engines like Yahoo AltaVista and Lycos, but Google was different. Its clean white homepage, lightning-fast results, and uncanny accuracy quickly drew users away from the cluttered, ad-heavy competitors. Word spread rapidly. By the early 2000s, Google wasn't just a search engine, it was becoming a verb. The company's first real money came from AdWords, a revolutionary advertising platform introduced in 2000 that let businesses target users based on their searches. It turned Google into a cash machine, almost overnight funding ambitious projects and giving it the freedom to expand beyond search. Gmail launched in 2004, shocked the tech world by offering 1 GB of free storage, hundreds of times more than competitors, and Google Maps soon followed, changing the way people navigated the world. The 2004 IPO valued Google at $23 billion, instantly creating hundreds of millionaires among its employees. But with great success came new ambitions. Larry and Sergey envisioned Google not just as a search tool, but as a company that would organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That mission pushed them into new markets, some wildly successful, others destined to fail. Yet, in these early years, Google seemed unstoppable. Every product launch generated buzz. Every innovation cemented its reputation as the Internet's most trusted brand. Few could imagine that beneath this meteoric rise, seeds of future crises were already being planted, as Google's dominance in search solidified the company's appetite for innovation and risk grew bolder. The early 2000s saw a wave of ambitious projects, some of which became household names, while others quietly disappeared into the tech graveyard. One of the most infamous was Google Wave, launched in 2009, with the promise of reinventing online communication. Part email, part instant messaging, part collaboration tool. It was hyped as the future of the internet. Yet its interface was confusing, its purpose unclear, and after just over a year, Google pulled the plug. Then came Google+, a social network designed to take on Facebook. Despite enormous investment integration into other Google services, and even forcing YouTube users to connect accounts, it never captured public interest. a massive data breach in 2018 sealed its fate, leading to its closure. But perhaps the boldest and most public failure was Google Glass. Introduced in 2013 as a futuristic wearable computer, it sparked fascination and outrage in equal measure. Critics blasted it for privacy concerns, limited functionality, and a $500 price tag that put it out of reach for most consumers. Glass holes became a cultural punchline, and the project was eventually shelved for the public market. These high-profile flops weren't just embarrassing, they were expensive. Billions of dollars were poured into ventures that never generated returns, raising questions about whether Google's strategy was too scattershot. At the same time, the company was making risky acquisitions, buying Motorola Mobility in 2012 for $12.5 billion in a bid to challenge Apple in smartphones. Less than 2 years later, Google sold Motorola to Lenovo for just $2.9 billion, keeping only the patents. The loss was staggering. Meanwhile, competition was intensifying. Microsoft's Bing chipped away at market share. Yahoo remained a threat in certain regions, and Facebook was monopolizing users' time online. In the mobile world, Apple's Safari browser dominated the iPhone ecosystem, forcing Google to pay billions annually just to remain the default search engine. Internally, the culture of 20% time, encouraging employees to spend a fifth of their work on side projects, created innovation, but also fragmentation, with too many products fighting for attention. While successes like Android and YouTube brought in new revenue streams, the growing list of abandoned experiments began to tarnish Google's image as a flawless innovator. It became clear that for every breakthrough, there were costly gambles that could have weakened the company's foundations. And soon, Google would face a challenge far more dangerous than a failed gadget or social network: the full force of government scrutiny. By the mid-2010s, Google was no longer just a tech company. It was a global power player, influencing economies, politics, and the daily lives of billions. That level of dominance inevitably attracted the attention of governments and regulators. In 2010, the European Commission began investigating Google over allegations that it manipulated search results to favor its own products while demoting competitors. The findings were damning. Google had been using its search monopoly to push services like Google Shopping to the top of results while burying rivals. Over the next decade, the EU hit the company with 3 massive antitrust fines, totaling more than $9 billion. These were not just symbolic slaps on the wrist, they signaled that the world's largest economies were willing to challenge Silicon Valley's giants head-on. The United States soon followed. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice filed its own landmark antitrust lawsuit, accusing Google of unlawfully maintaining monopolies in search and search advertising. Central to the case was Google's multi-billion-dollar deals with companies like Apple paying to remain the default search engine on devices. Prosecutors argued that this locked out competition and stifled innovation. But antitrust issues weren't the only source of trouble. Privacy concerns exploded after revelations about Google's vast data collection practices. Critics accused the company of tracking users across the web, building detailed profiles without sufficient consent, and even recording location data when users thought it was turned off. In 2019, Google faced outrage when it was revealed to be secretly working on Project Nightingale, a partnership with a major healthcare provider that gave it access to millions of patient records without informing them. Beyond privacy and antitrust, Google was also under fire for its role in shaping public discourse. YouTube, its subsidiary, was accused of enabling the spread of extremist content, misinformation, and harmful conspiracy theories. Governments in multiple countries demanded tighter moderation and threatened to impose heavy fines or restrictions. The combined weight of these battles was enormous. Legal costs soared. Public trust wavered, and the specter of forced breakups splitting Google's search advertising and other businesses hung in the air. Internally, leadership began to feel the strain. Some executives feared that if the legal pressure didn't ease, Google could face a future where its most profitable services were dismantled. But even as these threats mounted, an even more unpredictable crisis was brewing, one that wouldn't come from courtrooms or regulators, but from the rapidly shifting tech landscape itself. By the early 2020s, Google was still the world's dominant search engine, but cracks in its empire were beginning to show. The advertising model that had fueled its rise was shifting rapidly as users spent more time on platforms that didn't rely on traditional search. TikTok, Instagram, and Amazon's shopping search were all eating into Google's market share in different ways. TikTok in particular stunned analysts when surveys revealed that younger users were increasingly turning to it, not Google, for everything from restaurant recommendations to news. At the same time, YouTube, once seen as untouchable, was mired in repeated scandals. Advertisers fled the platform multiple times after their ads were shown alongside extremist or inappropriate content, forcing Google to implement sweeping yet costly content moderation changes. The pandemic years added further strain as advertisers cut budgets, revenue growth slowed, and competitors became bolder. But nothing shook Google's confidence more than the sudden AI boom. In late 2022, OpenAI's ChatGPT burst onto the scene, backed by Microsoft's deep pockets and integrated directly into Bing. For the first time in 2 decades, Google faced a serious challenger in its core business, not another search engine, but an entirely new way of finding information. Internally, executives declared a code red scrambling to accelerate the release of Bard, Google's own AI chatbot. The rushed timeline led to a disastrous demo in February 2023, where Bard made a factual error about the James Webb Space Telescope. That single mistake wiped $100 billion off Google's market value in just 1 day. Meanwhile, morale inside the company was plummeting. Layoffs, once unthinkable at Google, became reality as tens of thousands of employees were cut in an effort to streamline operations. Reports emerged of internal divisions over AI strategy, with some teams warning that rushing products to market could backfire, while others argued that slow action would let competitors pull ahead. The once enviable Google culture of creativity and openness began to erode under pressure. Investors and analysts started to wonder if Google's era of effortless dominance was over. The company was no longer setting the pace, it was reacting, chasing trends it used to define. For a company built on being the smartest and fastest in the room, that shift was existential. And yet, even in the midst of this turbulence, Google still had cards to play, moves that could determine whether it would recover or slide into long-term decline. Faced with the most serious threat to its dominance in decades, Google knew that hesitation could be fatal. The first step in its counterattack was to double down on artificial intelligence, the very technology that threatened to dethrone it. Bard, the AI chatbot, rushed out in response to ChatGPT, underwent rapid improvements, eventually evolving into Gemini, a more advanced and capable model designed to integrate seamlessly across Google's ecosystem. Unlike its rivals, Google had one advantage: no other company could match a direct line to billions of users through Search, Gmail, YouTube, and Android. This allowed Gemini to be quietly woven into everyday tools people already used, making AI a natural extension rather than a separate product. At the same time, Google shifted more focus to its cloud business. Google Cloud. Once a distant third behind Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, began to carve out a niche by targeting AI-powered enterprise solutions, cybersecurity, and industry-specific cloud services. Revenue from the cloud division started growing fast enough to become one of the company's most important future pillars. In hardware, Google refused to back down. The Pixel smartphone line, while not the best-selling device, globally gained a loyal following and became a showcase for Google's AI capabilities in photography and voice recognition. Nest smart home devices and the Fitbit acquisition gave the company a presence in the health and home automation markets, diversifying its consumer tech portfolio. But survival wasn't just about launching products, it was about repairing the brand. Google invested heavily in rebuilding trust, introducing more transparent data policies, and emphasizing user privacy. New features allowed people to auto-delete location history limit personalized ads and easily manage their digital footprint. These changes were partly driven by regulatory pressure, but they also addressed growing public concern over big tech's power. In the advertising business, Google adapted to a cookieless future by developing new targeting technologies like Privacy Sandbox, designed to keep advertisers happy while giving users more control over their data. And while rivals like Microsoft's Bing AI made headlines, Google quietly retained over 90% of the global search market, proof that user habits are hard to change. By late 2024, the panic of the Code Red days had eased. Revenue stabilized, AI products improved, and the company's sprawling empire from search to cloud to hardware looked more balanced than before. Yet the memory of how close it came to losing its crown remained fresh inside Google's leadership. The battle had been survived, but the war for the future of the internet was far from over. From a garage in Menlo Park to commanding the digital lives of billions, Google's journey has been one of breathtaking innovation and equally breathtaking risk. Along the way, it has stumbled with costly failures, fought bruising battles in courtrooms across the globe, and faced down existential threats from both governments and rivals. Yet time and again, it has adapted, evolving from a search engine into an AI powerhouse, a cloud contender, and a player in hardware health and smart home technology. Its resilience lies not only in its vast resources, but in its ability to weave itself into the fabric of everyday life so deeply that removing it feels almost impossible. But history shows that no empire, no matter how dominant, is immune to disruption. The forces that nearly toppled Google, once regulatory crackdowns, changing user behavior, and bold new technologies, are still out there waiting for the next opportunity. As AI reshapes the way we search, learn, and connect, the question is no longer whether Google can survive the next challenge, but whether it can continue to define the future instead of chasing it. The answer will determine not just the fate of one company, but the shape of the internet itself. So what do you think? Will Google's crown remain firmly on its head, or is another crisis already on the horizon?